We don't want to just protect your ministry for Lightwell. We also want to protect your insurability. And that's a huge part of not just the present today for ministry, but it's the future. And if we can have a part of that now and speak into that for ministries to protect their future, it's a great way to serve God, the kingdom, and serve ministries today.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lightwell Podcast. We are so glad to have you with us today. Maybe you've heard this phrase when talking about the world of insurance, calling it a necessary evil. When I hear that phrase, it's often about the mystery of it all. What exactly are we getting when we pay for insurance? Can we even have control over this at all? Well, those are the questions we're going to be asking Jason Rochester today. He's a managing partner and agent for Lightwell in the state of South Carolina, and he has just an absolute wealth of experience helping ministries improve their insurability. There are steps you can take. So we're going to be talking about those today with Jason. Let's get right into our conversation. Well, I am so excited to be joined by my friend Jason Rochester, who represents Lightwell Insurance Advisors as managing partner and agent in the state of South Carolina. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today.
Man, glad to be with you, Adam. It's a pleasure.
Oh, man. And I know that this will be a very useful conversation to ministries, but we got to kind of set the table of what we're talking about today. So can you talk about what does insurability mean in the world of ministry insurance?
Yeah. So insurability is the appetite that a carrier would have for an entity, for in our case, for a risk, for a ministry. If it's a low risk, then it's going to be something that is going to be favorable terms for a ministry, for the coverage that they're looking for, deductible structure, and pricing as well. Probably could have many carriers wanting in on those lower risks for the appetite that they have. But then you get into things that would be more of a location of a ministry, where they're at, claims experience, things that start factoring into what makes a low risk now be a higher risk that's going to change the ministry's appetite for that risk. It could be, worst case scenario, it could be that you're looking at higher deductibles, higher premiums, which the industry across the board has been seeing. But then you go to like the nuclear option, which would be they're going to deny coverage or a non-renewal, which we're seeing a lot in the marketplace. The ministries are experiencing that. So you want to also think about it too from this context as well, is that you think about all the insurance companies that are out there, and we watch TV commercials and Super Bowl ads and things like that, and we see all the funny commercials that are there for all the insurance carriers that are out there that will insure a building for fire or for wind and maybe general liability. Yeah, there's probably a lot out there that would say, yeah, we can do that. But then you get to the insurability of those that are focused on the ministry space, that are dedicated to that, that have coverages that are built out for ministries in mind. And that list is a lot smaller. So insurability is particularly in this space here is so crucial to make sure that you're aware of that and the factors that go into that.
So we'll go through and talk about some of those specific factors, but one you mentioned early in your answer is the size of a ministry when it comes to their insurability. Is it as simply put as the larger the ministry, the greater the risk, or are there other things related to size that impact insurability?
Size is a component, but I would say probably even a close one to that is going to be location. I know, like you think about real estate, and it's all about location, 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 right? It's all about getting the best spot. Well, insurance isn't too far from that as well. Looking to find what's the best location, what are areas of the country or in a state in a region that are not as prone to weather activity that would be resulting in claims. So a lot of that's factored into that, even on the insurance side, and the risk tolerance that carriers would have. So they're looking at earthquake, they're looking at wildfires, they're looking at hurricanes, tornadoes, hail, flooding, all these things. That's just a few examples of weather patterns that carriers would be looking at in different parts of the country to say who are more susceptible to these than others. And then when you get to those that do want to be in that space, so say we want to write some coastal exposure and coastal risks, So now you're getting into, well, how much do you want to be in that space? How much of a capacity do you want? How much bandwidth do you have in an area that's going to be more susceptible to that? So it's then the size of the ministry can also dictate too if it's too much exposure for a carrier to be in that space or not. So storm surge is another one that comes up on the coast, and knowing that even you can have great facilities and doing a really good job, but there's just the unknown of what can happen with these weather systems that come through. So making sure that you're aware of that. I have heard of ministries that have moved their church, like literally like put it up stills, put it on the road and moved it. Not far, but it even has happened in South Carolina where ministries have done that. That's not ideal. I don't think too many ministries are, hey, we're going to move from the coast to the middle part of the state or as far away from the coast as possible. No, that's not a normal situation. You are where you are. You're planted where God has put you for your ministry, but you want to be aware of these things and how they factor into the overall picture of insurance and your insurability.
That's really good. You said it so well right there at the end that these ministries are often called to a location. We want to do ministry for this community or this area. And so that part seems out of their hands. So what are the other areas where they've got levers to pull to improve their own insurability? What proactive measures can they take that might make an impact on their ability to find coverage?
Yeah. So I would say as a ministry, think every ministry leader on a deacon board, elder board, session board, trustee, council, those that are handling the insurance for the ministry need to be thinking about what can we be doing as a ministry to prevent having to file a claim for and property is one part of that, but then you have the liability component of it as well. Both factor into it. So what are the things addressing a maintenance issue, looking at your facilities, and it's something that particularly for churches, there can be that misconception of, well, our people are just at our church on Sundays. We'll do maybe life group or like a home group concept at people's homes during the week. So really, there's only people at the church on Sundays. So everything's fine. It looks fine, but your facilities are being exposed to the weather 24/7 on your facilities. So you need to be thinking and looking and evaluating your ministry's facilities to say, is there anything we can be doing to prevent a claim having to be filed and take care of it, being proactive in that space. So electrical systems, plumbing, um, HVAC, inspecting, maintaining your roofs, which is a big one. Just looking at all those factors will really help reduce the likelihood of a claim for your ministry. Being prepared for severe weather. So that's going to apply to more ministries than others. But when you know there's hurricanes that are coming or there's spring season that that any kind of storm front that could be coming through could be devastating. What are the things you can be doing now to prepare instead of being reactionary? You're just taking action and executing the plan to be prepared for these weather events. That'd be a big one there on that. I think another thing too is, man, technology just continues to advance, right? I mean, we're seeing it in so many spaces. Um, uh, you know, Artificial intelligence and how that's being used and how ministries can utilize it. But the technology for ministries to be able to take care of their facilities and to be alerted when things take place. I'm thinking of like a automatic water shut off valve that can be an app on your phone that notifies you that there's issue with water at the church at 2 o'clock in the morning when no one's there on a Thursday morning, but it also is going to not just alert you, but it's also going to tell you, hey, we turned it off for you to severely mitigate any kind of claim that would be taking place. That's huge. That's a game changer for insurance carriers, particularly when they're looking at what are the ministries that are thinking about this and are being proactive to put these things into place so that they are a better risk for insurance carriers to say, hey, this ministry is thinking ahead of the game. They're being proactive of the technology that makes them a better risk in this space. So looking at and there's other systems that are out there, and that's a great thing to check with Lightwell Insurance Advisor in your area to say, hey, what are the resources out there? What's the technology? What are the things that I can be looking into for my ministry, for my organization, to be that much more aware of what we can be doing as a ministry to better protect our facilities. Um, I think another one would be security measures, particularly for locks. So I pastored in Pennsylvania for 4 years before coming into the insurance world. And our church, we had just everybody had a key to get into the church. So did everybody from 7 years ago that also attended the church but doesn't attend the church now. So that was an issue of we have all these keys floating around that are church members, and it's like, who how did they even get a key for this person or that person? You look at, like, the master list on that, but then you're trying to, like, how do we get all these keys back? Or we're having to recalibrate all of these locks or just, like, evaluate, do we need to do it again? Do we need to go do it again? There's technology now for security for your ministry's facilities with a key fob, a card, and just, like, an access code that you can control that. You're not back to the key system of, "Oh, Bob or Sam, they have a key. Uh-oh, we gotta recalibrate because they aren't members of the church and they were disgruntled and left." You now can control that very easily to where you have access to who's getting in and out of the ministry's facilities, particularly with children and youth, for preschools, for daycares. You definitely want to make sure that you have your security measures in place, utilizing the technology that's out there. And once again, it's a great thing to check with a Lightwell agent on what are those resources that are there to make sure your ministry's utilizing them. So when a carrier doesn't have to ask or require a ministry to take a proactive measure, you're required to do this before your renewal. Before we'll offer terms, you need to do X, Y, and Z. If a ministry can do that themselves, and then when they are looking at insurance options in the marketplace, and they already have that in place for them, and the carriers can see that, that definitely improves their situation from an insurability standpoint.
That's excellent. That's so good, Jason. A lot of good things in there, but one thing that seems to be a theme is
Yeah.
the idea of being proactive, thinking about things before it's time to react to a claim that's already come in or a situation that's got them in a worst case scenario. So you may have already mentioned these, but are there any specific areas that you see ministries facing that when you talk to them about it, it switches them from that reactive posture into an area where they think, all right, I'm willing to think ahead on this because the stakes are high enough to my ministry?
Yeah, I think a big one would be child protection. That's a huge one nowadays. I hope that we're past the days that ministries are not saying anymore, "It won't happen to us." They hear about it, they see it in the news, they hear about it down the street, and then, "Oh, that's so unfortunate," but, I just don't see that. I don't see it happening here. I trust our people. We've known our people for a long time, but that's a big one to do what you need to do on sexual misconduct guidelines, abuse prevention policies, background checks. You got to do them. It's not a thing about should we consider them, should we not? I mean, this is this you're defending the defenseless of putting your youth and the future of your church and your community you need to protect them, and you need to do your due diligence as a ministry and organization to be going through and doing the background checks, having what do you do if something takes place? How is that reported? How is that handled? And that's communicated in your abuse prevention guidelines so that your ministry volunteers are aware of what they need to do. That's a big thing for particularly think of a church and abuse prevention is that this is not employees that are going to on Monday morning for 2 hours, 3 hours, sit through an abuse prevention seminar. And you bring someone in, or you have the youth pastor, or the executive pastor go through this is what we're going to do. And a lot of ministries aren't doing that. It's just people that are, hey, I'll jump in, I'll serve in that area, I'll help in the nursery, I'll teach children's church. So you want to not suppress the those that would be willing to volunteer with working with youth. But at the same time, you got to make sure that you're doing your part on your ministry's end to be doing adequate screening, background checks, asking the right questions you need to on your volunteer application form. That should just be something that's in place. And that's where something we can help with getting you that information and helping you get on the right direction of where you need to go. If you've never done it before, it can seem really daunting, but there's help. And you don't have to do it by yourself. And there's resources and tools that we can provide to you on that to help get you in the right direction on that. And I would say this too on it. I mentioned AI and technology, and it's gone a long ways with that. But even like, hey, do an abuse prevention policy for a church on AI and see what it spits out. You're going to get some things that are on there, but we're dedicated in a space with working with ministries and churches. So would really encourage you to leverage someone who's in that ministry insurance space in the things that we've seen in our experience in the ministries that we have gone through and held their hand through going through these situations. As once again, I said that they never thought they would be in that situation, to be able to help guide them through that and to say, "Hey, here are the things that you need to be thinking about and be aware of." Ultimately, it's your ministry's decision on what you choose to do. But yeah, abuse prevention, I think, is one that we just got to get on that train of everybody's got to do it. And we've had someone serving in our ministry for 30 years. Everybody trusts them. They're like, like the mom or the grandmother of the church, and everybody just loves them on that. Everybody should be held to the same standard when it comes to abuse prevention, background checks, screening. Everybody should be at the same bar. You're not making exceptions for anybody. And there are the stories out there that you run them and you're like, I did not think we would have something come through on this person, but that's why you do it, to protect the youth in your church.
Absolutely. It is, the ministry's most important calling is to care for the next generation. And like you said, those who can't take care of themselves on their own. So I really appreciate that answer a lot. So this is a big gear shift from that. But when you look at a ministry's financial stability, how much does that impact their ability to find insurance coverage?
Particularly with where the hard market's at right now in the insurance landscape, you get to what are the financial reserves? What does the church have money in the bank to be able to be paying for insurance coverage, for the premiums, but also to have coverage for the deductible structures. We are seeing deductibles go up for ministries across the board, and we're seeing it from other carriers, other churches, and for us in South Carolina, I mean, we're seeing it across the whole state, and that does put more of a burden on the ministry to be able to cover an increased deductible and in situations and increased premiums that they are seeing. And we'll get to more later on what, like a snapshot of why we're in the situation that we're in with that and what does the future look like? Is it always going to be like this? But yeah, ministries have to be thinking through their reserve situation. There's great technology out there to do like a reserve assessment, capital fund campaigns that you're looking at managing of what are going to be our big projects as a church moving forward, things we're going to need to repair or replace as a ministry that we can be preparing for now and what it's going to cost. And tools will even tell you with items that would be appreciated between now and 5 years from now or 7 years from now, what the cost is going to be now versus what's the cost going to be 5 or 7 years from today. Maybe you be proactive as a ministry to have that conversation with your church insurance agent to say, what would it look like to do this? Ministries that are proactive to talk about their policy of, hey, what can we do on our end? What levers can we pull, or what things can go up or down? As an insurance agent, I love when ministries are proactive about that, asking me instead of them waiting for me to do it. And I will do that. That's my job as an insurance agent, is to come and bring value of, here are options for you. I'm not making the choice for you. You're making the choice as the ministry. But if I can give them as many options as possible for them to consider, say, okay, here's pros and cons. This costs more, but it gives you this coverage, and to put it all on the table for them and let them make that choice. But when they're saying, hey, help us from budget standpoint, or just us to be stewards of the funds that we already have set aside, like a rainy day fund or just our reserves that we have for our, just like the insurance reserve. That's there. It's healthy. We don't feel like we need to add anything more into it, but it's like, can we go ahead and bump things up because what we have there as that backup, but it'd be reducing our insurance premium. So it's always just something to just be proactive in talking with your insurance agent and having a conversation with them.
That is some really good practical guidance for how they can do things to make their premiums lower if they want, but also what proactive steps does it take to make that happen. So, with that in mind, when seeking insurance coverage as a ministry, what are what are the questions or steps that ministries really need to take to make sure their coverage is adequate for their unique needs as a ministry?
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think about the a ministry is different than other organizations. Yeah, you think about like a shoe store, for example. You get your employees that are selling shoes. You got the coverage that would be there for them. What are the risks that are associated in that? Yes, theft, vandalism, things like that. But it's employees. You don't have volunteers working at a shoe store. You come to a ministry risk that you have from an insurance standpoint looking at it. Um, I'm insuring the buildings, yes. I'm insuring the contents that the church owns inside the buildings and maybe even contents that individuals that attend the church own that are being kept at the church potentially on that, but just they could be musical instruments that are there for the band or the worship team. You think about the employees, yes, that are working at the church and coverage for them, but then you get these people, it's the church, the volunteers, the members that are attending and are involved in so many different aspects of ministry and how, where's the coverage for them? What are the things that they're involved in? So that's where you really need to take that step back and thinking about the risks that you have as a ministry that are going to be different from another entity, organization, or even a business in your community. You're different. Making sure that you don't just go with the lowest limit for something just to enter into the space. So, something I think like sexual misconduct coverage, um, it, particularly like if you're a ministry that has a preschool, a daycare, Christian school that's connected with your ministry, your organization, or maybe you're a standalone Christian school, Christian preschool, you need to not just be, okay, at least we have sexual misconduct coverage, which, yes, it's better to have it than to not have it because not all carriers provide sexual misconduct coverage for liability coverage. But you also need to be thinking about where does that limit need to be and making sure that it's at with the higher exposure that you have, you probably need to be looking at a higher limit than it just being bare bones or just looking at more from a budget standpoint. Make sure you're investing into your insurance policy for your limits. Yes, it impacts premium with that, but we hope you're never having to use it. But I mean, that's what you're transferring risk. That's what insurance is at the end of the day. You're transferring risk from you having to pay for it out of your own pocket to now the insurance carrier and the coverage that they're providing for you. So the more that you can afford to transfer the risk and take on higher limits, you're better off to do that. And ministries need to evaluate the risks that they have, and having someone that works in the ministry space and knows ministry insurance and doing reviews and going over your renewal and being able to sit down and talk about, hey, what anything new that your ministry is doing, what's going on from last time we've gotten together to now, picking up the phone and say, hey, oh, we're doing XYZ ministry and we wanted to let you know, is our coverage in place for this? Do we need to add anything else or increase limits? Those are things that you work with people that know the space. You're in a much better position to have your coverage be where it needs to be, and it's not just a static thing here, but as your ministry grows and adds on new things or maybe scales back, you're able to make those adjustments each year for your renewal.
Fantastic. Okay, so Jason, you've been in the ministry insurance world for a lot of years now. What are some common misconceptions maybe that you've encountered about ministry specific insurance?
Yeah, I think um, one of the ones that initially comes to mind is it should be repeated just because the exposure of the, well, that's never happened to us. That happened down the road. That'll never take place for our ministry. And I think that the more that we see in the news and we see just where society is as a whole, it shouldn't be surprising that we're seeing more things take place. Ministries just can't have that like head in the sand. We're going to trust God to work out those details. Yes, we need to believe with the sovereignty of God and his faithfulness to us because he is going to be faithful to us and he is going to protect and guide us. But we also need to do what we need to do on our end of having coverages, having, we talk about like abuse prevention guidelines, having things in place, policies, procedures to protect our people because you have so many situations that take place and it hits the news fan of what the church did or didn't do in a particular situation that could be damaging for that ministry's reputation in the community, where some even do have to just close their doors at some point because they can't recover for something like that. And I think another one too is workers' compensation. I know we're talking about insurability and that being presented for ministries, but workers' compensation is just for large ministries. It's just for the ones that have a ton of employees. They got a Christian school and a daycare and this and that. That's for those large mega organizations. We're small. We don't need it. False. That is the farthest thing from the truth. We have had ministries where it's been the pastor is the only employee for the ministry and they are injured on the job. I mean, that is what workers' compensation coverage is for. You're gonna go to the hospital and ask, how'd you get injured? Oh, I was at church where I work and I was injured doing this within the scope and job of what you're doing. And guess what? That's workers' compensation. So do you want to pay that? And we've had it be where the ministry said, we didn't realize we needed coverage for him, and here he is. And now the church is taking on the burden financially or the individual for that where you could particularly where the small ministries, it's not that much premium to have workers' compensation coverage, and we hope you never have to use it, and we know your people hope they never have to use it, but it's just thinking through the exposure that you have. And so making sure that you're talking to your agent, talk to a Lightwell agent about workers' compensation coverage. What is the minimum? So the minimums are different each state. It's 4 or more employees. It's required by the state. In South Carolina, I know Florida is the same way, but our neighbors up north in North Carolina is 3 or more. So you need to know about your state, but that's where you need to talk with an agent that knows how that applies to your ministry on that. I think the last thing for common misconceptions is filing small claims aren't going to impact me as much. They're small, so my insurance. I mean, that's what I have it for, right? Is to use it. So if it's $1,000 deductible and it's a $1,400 damage that we have taken place to our building or to shingle damage, something like that, you're better off just taking care of that yourself as a ministry and not filing that claim, because the two things that insurance carriers are looking at when it comes to a ministry's exposure, and we talk about insurability, they're looking at frequency of claims and severity. So severity, a church fire, lightning strike, whatever, those things can take place, the acts of God, we would say. And it's not okay. That happens, we get it, but it's not like you have one thing and then in most cases, can't speak to that as I'm not an insurance carrier, I'm an agent, but our experience is that it's they're looking at that severity, but there's also that component where you can't help some things. But the frequency part of it, there are things that just okay, this ministry just files stuff and it's small stuff and it maybe doesn't add up. It's okay. Still from the premium they're paying and what they're filing in claims, it's not like it's bumping up against that, but there's a pattern here that they're not taking care of things themselves, and it's more viewing their insurance policy as a product than it is a service. It's a hey, this is what I pay premium for, so let me continue to use it. Well, that can really damage your insurability moving forward if there are things that you can take care of yourself. If you can't take care of it yourself, it's the large, like the things say, oh, we don't have the money in our reserves. We don't have the money in checking to take care of this claim. And this is what we have insurance for. Absolutely. That's what it's there for. So I don't want anybody to hear that I'm saying don't use your insurance policy, but it's how you're using it and your mindset and your approach. So working with Lightwell, that's where you're going to have that partnership to talk through the situation that takes place. And that's where you call our service team and we walk through, okay, what happened? Okay, here's your deductible structure and help try to guide you through that and see what you want to do in that situation is a huge thing. So just because it's small claims, you're going to find yourself to go, and we have heard it. We have heard ministries say, if I would have known that filing those claims over the last 3 years, 5 years would put me in this situation today where I'm being non-renewed, where I'm having to talk to you in a new relationship to try and find coverage because I got non-renewed by who I was with before. No one wants to be in that situation, but we are seeing so many ministries there. They're saying, if we would have known, we wouldn't have filed the claims. We wouldn't have done it. So it's just being aware of that can pay dividends for your ministry moving forward so that you're just better prepared and educated and how to handle the landscape that's out there.
Okay, so while I can say confidently that a traveling knife fight was not on my bingo card for a Lightwell podcast, I'm still amazed to hear it and glad to know that that possibility is out there. So while we're talking about examples, can you share examples of either this went really well, a ministry took this proactive step and it helped them, or even on the flip side of that, here's a missed opportunity. And if they had done this, they would have not encountered the situation that they encountered.
Being proactive to put in automatic water shutoff valves, a company like FlowLogic and others that are really doing a good job in this space for ministries to put that there, and it makes them more attractive to an insurance carrier to say, hey, maybe we are in a place that's more prone to wildfires or hurricanes or tornadoes to come through, but we're doing everything that we can to position ourselves to be able to have coverage with a carrier that gets us and understands us, and that pays dividends for that. Of course, it's not a guarantee, and I don't want anybody to hear that, like I'm promising, like if you do this, this, and this, that's a guarantee. That's a slam dunk. You're going to get it. But anything that you can be doing on that space, sprinkler systems, the suppression systems, and that they're not required for all ministries, depending on seating capacity, size of auditorium, codes in a county or a city. A lot of that comes into how that's there. But if you make that investment, or particularly for ministries that are looking at maybe doing a new build for a family life center, sanctuary, fellowship hall, education, multi-purpose building, you putting that in at the beginning really helps when you're looking at getting coverage now and in the future when you're doing those things without having to wait or retrofitting a building for that, which can be very costly to do that. And you can just build it into it from the beginning.
Your heart for protecting and serving the church and seeing the church flourish in the state of South Carolina and everywhere is evident to me. And it really does move me. That's very, very cool, Jason. So I want to say thank you to you on behalf of the ministries in South Carolina that you serve for looking out for things that they may not otherwise have eyes for, to make sure that those things are taken care of so that they can keep doing the things that they do have eyes for, their calling. And so I
Amen.
really
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I want to say thank you for your time today. And we'll look forward to having you back on the podcast at some time real soon.
Look forward to that. And thanks.
My thanks once again to Jason Rochester. I know we talked about this in the trailer for this podcast about shining light in areas that would otherwise remain dark, but Jason took our entire podcast today and it did exactly that. He just kept talking about these are areas ministries aren't thinking about. So my hope is that you took something like that away from our conversation today. And I want to thank you for joining us and taking the time to listen in, and hopefully this was helpful to you. And if you need more resources or you have more questions, please go to lightwell.com and we'd be happy to help you take the next step to improve your insurability. So until the next episode of the podcast, let's go and let it shine.